Lower feeder cattle prices, and yet another week with no data in the U.S. government and lower corn and soybean prices. Jerry Guidel is ready to assess all of that and more right here on Connected Farmer, your channel to keep you up to date with the latest trends in agriculture and livestock. So, Jerry, we have this week again with no big news. We are expecting for next week a meeting between President Trump and Xi Jinping. But this week we have nothing new. The news only came in the beef sector with this extended quota for Argentina, which basically replaces the quotas that were filled by Brazil. And but still, the feeder cattle prices have dropped, and the other commodities have followed through.
Yes, yes. Well, definitely a topsy-turvy week here in both the meats and also in the grain prices and that. Uh, the uh, It seems that President Trump woke up and says, "Oh, beef prices are high, so I'm going to do something about it." Type situation, which seems a little ironic because he's really kind of laissez-faire about those kind of things. But uh, to some extent, the idea of moving up Argentine beef imports from 20 million pounds to 80 million pounds is a gesture, but it's in reality. Excuse me, 80
80,000.
80,000 metric tons. Yes, I was just going to correct myself on that from there, which turned out to be 176 million pounds. Wow, sounds fantastic. Problem is that's a drop in a bucket. That's the previous level was, 1.5 to 2%. So maybe we're talking about a number that's moved up to 3% and a half, maybe four type situation. And that's so now all of a sudden, we're in a scenario here of the impact on retail prices is going to be probably hard to even see, relatively speaking, in a type situation. It might be slightly positive in the ground beef world, but from the standpoint of steaks and things like that, there's not even a connection from there. So there you go. Uh, Definitely, President Trump did not realize who he was putting some economic impact on was a huge amount of ruckus there from all the beef association people because they've been a very very strong supporter of him for many years and that so they were feeling their toes were being stepped on very very hard. It wasn't as hard as I think we both understand and that, but from the standpoint of outward expression, and that definitely had lots of ruckus about that. And then the whole scenario here of going into next week uh, with things ahead of the his meeting with Z in guess it's in South Korea. At this point, definitely made things interesting at this point. The Right now, at least, the market activity here is going to be uh, kind of sitting back and waiting to see what happens with that meeting. President
Yeah,
Trump seems,
it's still we still got some harvest to go. We yeah, right here
yeah,
in New Jersey, there's still some lots to be harvested.
oh, you see some corn out there in the field out there. Well, I don't disagree that there's some of that going on. Part of it's from the standpoint, in many cases, we've got uh, people kind of waiting back to see if they can get some things out of the elevator so they can put more things in the elevator. And I think that is a factor, particularly in parts of the eastern corn belt and that. The one thing that also is continuing on here, and we've got a lot of pointing back and forth depending on which state you're in and where you're at in the state. Uh, definitely there's quite dramatic impacts of this weather and the impact of the disease, and that from there, the my areas of west central Illinois, or west central Iowa, I guess. I finally got my last of my corn in here late this week, and it came in year over year about 15 to 18% less on yield. That kind of fits in last year's yield. Now, that doesn't mean I think the national number is going to be 15 to 18% below the last year's U.S. yield because we switched things around, but it really is an indication here that there is areas of this country that, and I've heard the same thing across many parts of Iowa. I've also heard some good yields across Iowa and parts of Illinois. Same thing. The I states, I think, are really kind of erratic, and that's usually when you have your best yields is when they're having their best yields in those three states along the way. So, in reality, here. We really also need to get this government back together here and get things going. I don't know that we'll have our November crop report issued on time, even if it uh, happens to be settled here, because I doubt very seriously that we're going to get the U.S. government open uh, uh, while President Trump is in Asia. So that's a scenario that looks like that we're not going to have anything happening until early November.
Yeah,
But
yeah, there also could be some changes when it comes to the tariff over Brazil. There is going to be a meeting between Trump and Lula in Asia, but I don't think that anything is going to change for the reason that right now things with Latin America are going the opposite way with more rates with the boats of drug traffickers. So I don't see in this context where things would improve with the relationship between Trump and Lula.
oh, I don't disagree there. They definitely have different ideas about how the world should function, to say the least. And right now, at least, uh, uh, lots of people trying to figure out how. All the scenarios Argentina back and forth first that he gives them extra money, then he decides to buy some of their grains, and so he's definitely rewarding the people that might be on his side of the ledger. But I'm not sure that Argentina didn't also take advantage of that opportunity to sell a lot of stuff before uh, the door really closed on them from that standpoint. And at this point. To some extent, until we get past the meeting here between the U.S. and China this week, that anything's going to happen. At this point, I guess I'm still very cautious that any big event will happen here. Maybe it'll be just kicking the can down the street again. But right now, at least, the that's a very cautionary tale here at this time. If we have some emotions about maybe some kick up in exports and things like that, I don't think U.S. farmers that might need maybe some cash here at harvest time might not take advantage of those scenarios. Corn has had some improvement in basis and in certain areas and also price. And that beans are so tough. Commentary here on yields out there definitely isn't as disappointing, I have to say, as it is in corn. And that we're at 53 and a half bushel kind of estimate, which I think is quite optimistic. But at the same time, uh, we need a full bushel or more down on things. And right now, we don't have any updates scheduled. So I hope that the USDA and once they get the government back open, we have to have some kind of a update it, even if it's later than the scheduled November report. We can't wait all the way to January before we know what kind of crops we might or might not have. We had such a dramatic change last year of 3.5 bushels on corn in the final number. Let's not have something like that happen again this year's USDA numbers.
Yeah, so you also mentioned the in previous editions that other players might come and buy from the United States, at least when it comes to soybeans. I'm not sure what they're doing right now. Maybe they were waiting to see the outcome of these negotiations.
Yeah, I also have the same kind of crazy idea that they shouldn't have been in here taking advantage of some of these lower prices and that. And the interesting thing is that the futures prices have some look, but we've had such wide basis levels, particularly for shipments going to Asia here at this point, because there hasn't been any kind of demand set up on the West Coast. And I think that's going to be a potentially an interesting twist here that we could have if we do somehow or other have an idea that China's going to be back in here buying some things, which, as I said earlier here, I think it's very cautionary at this point that that the interesting area here on soybeans is that I'm not sure there's that many more bushels available to squeeze things through till next spring's South American crop comes through, and so there could be quite a scramble going on here in the beans. So that I guess I'm willing to store beans and see what happens here because of this combination of buyers on the sidelines and weather and crop sizes and stuff like that from there, and the wide basis levels, I think, justify trying to store that crop while marketing corn on to keep kind of some funds in your pocket and that, and maybe even in some cases, people coming back to the market here and owning stuff either as an option or a futures position in corn is not a bad approach either. But right now, at least, everybody's kind of sitting around waiting to see what will happen in the big meeting between Z and the President Trump. And that, and I guess that's where the market is right now. We're kind of waiting to see what happens in this big meeting between China and the U.S.
Yeah, so you think it might be any short-term sellout?
Yes, if we have a little pop in things that we get going into, I think that the price points here on D's corn, uh, you've got this 430 area. There's a possibility it might have a quick pop through there for another 5 to 10 cents, but definitely having some light amount there. Beans, that's really an interesting one because the basis levels are so wide here. The previous highs in the 1050 zone. Uh, might pop a little bit, but unless we can get some crazy comment that and that, which maybe we will get something happening in the soybean area here by China, and that then we could swing all the way up into the 1090s, and that which would be an opportunity to maybe get our first sale off in beans for the new crop of 2026, 25, 26. So those are some price points that are floating around out there that might be areas to consider some sales on a quick reaction if it happened.
All right, sir. We'll see. Thank you very much.
You bet. Take care, and it'll be a wild week this week. Actually, my one last thing here I should have talked about is my meeting that I went to out in Des Moines on Wednesday. Lots of gloom and doom there, and basically the data and what's coming out of the USDA. That's kind of the thing you'd expect. But at this point, I was a little disappointed that some of the presenters didn't talk about what ifs a little bit more. But in general, here, lots of uh, and they mentioned some stuff about some yields on corn being lower, but really didn't point out that. And it is a difficult situation on corn. If you take 2 bushels off, it doesn't mean you're going to the moon, but at the same time, it could make a factor going longer term. But we'll look at that next week after the and that on the Halloween weekend.
All right, thank you.
Take care.